Strap yourself in. We have Archer and Joby CEOs come face to face in an exciting interview full of important information on both companies. Hi hustlers. Today I'm here for a massive day. We're going to watch Archer CEO Adam Goldstein come face to face with Joe Ben-Bever from Joby Aviation, and it's a must see. Do me a favour before we get into it. Hit that subscribe as we release at least one eVTOL video, and I've claimed the most active eVTOL channel here on YouTube. Alright, here we go.
I am joined by three pioneers in urban air mobility. Adam from Archer, Akhil from the GCAA, and Joe Ben from Joby. So without further ado, before we launch ourselves into answering our question, if you can introduce yourself, Akhil, if you want to get started.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Happy to be here on the DriftX, seeing all the stakeholders under one roof. My name is Aila Zeri, the Assistant Director General of Civil Aviation Authority of the UAE. So I'm looking after the...
Now, before we get into this, Joby actually have secured a nice deal with the UAE, and I have a video that I just released a few days ago, so if you haven't checked that out, make sure you do.
Safety sector. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe Ben.
Good afternoon. My name is Joe Ben. I'm the founder and CEO of Joby Aviation. It's really a pleasure to be here. Very grateful to the Saudi cluster, to Audio, for DMT, and for the entire Abu Dhabi ecosystem for the very warm welcome and the incredible lean in on this exciting new age of mobility.
And last but not least, Adam.
I'm Adam Goldstein, the founder and CEO of Archer Aviation. I'm also very excited to be here, very thankful for this opportunity, and thankful for the collaboration with the whole UAE ecosystem, the regulators. Thank you, Akhil, and thank you to all of our partners out there as well.
Excellent. So let's get into the conversation. So more and more of the experts in the sector sees UAE as the first country in the world to offer regularly scheduled urban air mobility services. Could you please describe how you're preparing for day one? What is your strategy for this market, and how do you plan to scale the services? Adam, if you can get us started.
The UAE offers a very unique opportunity to the whole industry of building eVTOLs. There is an energy here that the whole ecosystem has been excited about to bring to market. And so for me, it really starts with the ecosystem and the partners. And so Archer can't do this alone. We are partnered up with many different groups across the region to look at different parts of the operation, like vertiports or MRO, or even the construction of the aircrafts themselves and bringing them doing final assembly here. And so it is our ambition to be operating here as soon as possible. And so we're working through the regulatory process in the US with the FAA, and then also in partnership with the GCAA to make sure we can deliver a safe aircraft from day one, and also be able to scale into an entire network that can service the entire country.
Now, I want to stop it here. He talks about the US versus the UAE. I do think the UAE is a completely different market. Both Archer and Joby are going to come in at a higher price point than your conventional taxis. Now, if you looked at the likes of Tesla when they first came out, they hit the top end of the market just for that big, nice margin. The thing is, when you go first in on the UAE, it's not going to tell you too much about the uptake on it. Because the UAE have the money, you're not going to have to worry too much about charging the upmarket price. So I really look forward to seeing it come to one of the Western countries, just to see, does it really take on the likes of the Ubers?
Mr. Akhil?
Yeah, I think being prepared for day one, we were fortunate back in 2017 when the leaders of the country They have seen eVTOL and urban air mobility as a new mode of transportation. And back then we started our preparation for day one. So we did quite a lot of progress into this area, even with absence of any international standards from ICAO related to urban air mobility operations. We said we better be prepared back then, so not to wait for these changes to take place. So from that perspective, we started working on the infrastructure regulations. We do have our rules out, which is it's of its kind globally. And I'm happy to also announce that this week we issued our first approval for a vertiport operation here on the Yas Island. So this is a great achievement to see things that is moving into reality. Back then, when we talked about urban air mobility, we're talking about advanced air mobility. Could have been seen as something futuristic, but now it is reality. We could see the reality happening. Apart from infrastructure, we do have lots of work on operational side of the business. We are closely working with our allies at the global level to see what's happening. And I think we are very much ready for day one.
Perfect. Joby.
So
Now, I can't wait to see Joe Bren's approach for Joby in comparison to Archer's, or is he going to pull off something quite similar?
As we've just heard, the lean-in from the government here in the UAE is really unprecedented. The momentum on building out infrastructure, the momentum on following on with the incredible work that's going on for certifying these aircraft around the world is really fantastic. The support from all the different areas of the government here in the UAE and as well as Abu Dhabi and Dubai is just fantastic. And we're seeing increasing momentum with the build-out of infrastructure, and I really want to highlight how vitally important infrastructure is and how fantastic it is that the UAE is able to move expediently on the development and the permitting of infrastructure, because that's what's going to make this service really compelling for people, is if you can fly from where you are to where you want to go, and that requires building out infrastructure at critical destinations across Abu Dhabi and across the country. So we think that this is...
Now, I think one of the biggest marketing points in this is the amount of time it's going to save. Both companies are looking at taking 45-minute journeys down to 10 minutes. You go from a bird's eye view rather than throughout the roads. I think both companies need to sell it more as it'll save time rather than it'll be a better service.
A fantastic highlight for how fast and how inviting the UAE is for this new mode of transportation.
And Adam, now that we're talking about infrastructure, can you tell us what Archer is doing on the infrastructure side?
Yeah, so it starts with understanding where people are already moving. And so what we've done is looked at the points of interest and really tried to understand where people want to go, because the commitment to build infrastructure is quite significant. But the good news is there's actually a lot of infrastructure that's already in place. And so it's exciting, that Akil has talked about, the first vertiport here actually being constructed. But I think over the next 12, 24, 36 months, you're going to see a lot of announcements around points of interest. First, I think it will start with obvious points of interest where people are going to. But very quickly, there will be opportunities for even local business operators to start adding new vertiports, because it can be a value creation opportunity for the businesses themselves. So for example, I lived in New York City for many years. If you live closer to the subway, your real estate was typically more expensive. If you live closer to vertiports, your real estate might be more valuable because you're offering access to this incredible transportation service that will really help move the way you move on an everyday basis. And so we'll make sure we're partnered with all the right players in town, and really work to make sure we build out a compelling operation that everyone can use. That's not unique to Archer, but is really helpful for the entire industry.
Excellent. Well, thank you. So let's switch gear a little bit.
Now, that is interesting. He's opening it up, a bit like Tesla have done with the electric ports. The thing is, will Archer then charge the likes of Joby or Lilium or whoever wants to use this vertiport for this service? Or are they just going to let it happen, let competition flourish? It'd be interesting to see.
To regulations. So all the three big regulators in the world, the CAC in China, EASA in Europe, FAA in the US, have regulations that are not fully harmonized. And each of these regulator is developing his own path towards entering into service. So as an OEM, how are you dealing with making sure you satisfy all of these different regulations? And Aila, as a regulator, how are you working with your colleagues across the world to create the regulations in UAE? Aila, if you want to get us started, please.
Yeah, I think this is a very known challenge across the board, having regulations not consistent globally. Not even at OEM level, even at receiving end from state of registry and state of operation, when it comes to receiving different certification standards from the state of design, the interoperability will become an issue at scale. So we as receiving CAs, we do have that challenge. Back then, when we coming from the conventional mode of transportation, those challenges were there, and it was addressed through collaborations between states. For example, FAA and EASA, when they work on type certifications, sometimes they do it together as like a twinning program. In advanced air mobility, this is going to repeat itself. The history is going to repeat itself. We highlighted this issue to the ICAO, that something needs to be done to avoid coming to this trap. We know this is going to happen because of, let's say, regulatory framework varies from country to country. So this area is possible to happen. To come as part of mitigations, what ICAO did, they have created a study group for advanced air mobility to better harmonize between states, reduce the gaps as much as possible, practically possible. However, there will be certain differences that OEMs, they need to live with. We as receiving end, as state of registry and state of operators, of course, also we need to live with. So this is basically, I think, from my end. Yeah.
Thank you.
So we're very, very grateful for the very constructive dialogue we've had with the GCAA over the past 6 years. And the ability to take all the work that we've done with the FAA, as we have completed stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3 of our certification process with the FAA, and we're now well on our way with the 4th stage, and to be able to take the groundwork that we've laid there and bring all of that process and all that learning all the foundation of our certification process. And
Now, I'll drop that video at the end. I've done a nice video on why I really do think Joby is going to hit that 2025 target, and we hear from Joby themselves on why they will hit that target.
and bring it here and engage in a really constructive and forward-thinking way with the GCA. So very, very pleased with the engagement and with the momentum we're seeing.
Joby, what about entry into service? You guys plan to operate your own aircraft here in UAE. So how are you dealing with that?
So our target is to launch service here in the UAE before the end of next year.
And Adam, you are working with large local partners for entry into service. Can you tell us a little how you are approaching it?
Yes, so as I mentioned earlier, I think the ecosystem is what's critical to building a big sustainable business that can scale. And so I don't think it's something that Archer is going to be able to do alone. And the good news is the partnership with the Sabi cluster and the partnership with audio has enabled the discussions with a lot of the different ecosystem players. And so there's a lot to learn about the local markets, and there's a lot to learn about how a lot of the business is done here. So for example, there's a lot of really great companies here like Etihad Training, which has an incredible amount of experience training pilots. And so when we start to think about how the pilot network needs to grow for urban air mobility, it's not just urban air mobility, it's these pilots continue to build hours and go on to fly larger aircraft and to be an enabler to one of the challenges across all of aviation, which is a shortage of global pilots. And so I think the critical part here is it's not just about Archer, it's not even just about urban air mobility, it's about the aviation industry bringing a new form of safe transportation that can help, not only just help the way people move, but also help grow a really important business here in the UAE.
Thank you.
Now, Adam goes on about infrastructure. I've got a question for you. Comment below if you could ever see a collaboration between Archer and Joby, or will they just remain separate entities? It'd be interesting to see your thoughts.
So if we shift gear a little bit, right? When we talk about electric aviation, we always talk about sustainability. And aviation has a big goal to be net zero by 2050. And eVTOL will be a small but continuously growing piece of this net zero goal. So what are the efforts that your company is pursuing to make sure you're going to have a positive impact on emission, especially consider that you will be using lots of batteries? What is the impact of the grid energy cleanliness on your emissions?
So sustainability is a core tenet of our values at Joby. We have committed to source 100% of the electricity that goes into running our manufacturing facilities from renewable sources. We have also made that commitment for the operations of our aircraft. And so this is critical for the sustainability of charging and operating our fleet, as well as manufacturing our fleet, to deliver the lowest grams of CO2 per passenger kilometer, which is the metric that I like to use as we look to, with every successive generation of aircraft that we build, to become more and more sustainable. And I'd also like to highlight the incredible work here in the UAE, both on renewable energy, but also on green hydrogen and the generation of hydrogen. In my view, hydrogen electric propulsion is a critical unlock as we take the technological breakthroughs that have come with the generation of battery electric aircraft, and we apply them to more and more of the aviation missions. And so I think that we're just at the tip of the iceberg, and the opportunities before us for taking these technologies and scaling them is really exciting. And the work that the Savvy Cluster is doing and the emphasis that the UAE is putting into building the next stage of aviation here in Abu Dhabi is really unprecedented.
And Adam.
Now, the hydrogen project will open up Joby like keys to even more capital. With the electric vehicles, they're only great for small hops intra-city. With the likes of your hydrogen, you could go from city to city, and as you can imagine, the capital there will be insane.
How are you guys looking at sustainability?
I think I agree with Joban, and I think Joban and Joby have done a great job of setting a pathway for taking this concept, this new transportation revolution, and making it very sustainable. And so there are lots of different angles to do this. And so without being repetitive, an additional concept that we are looking at is as you go through the manufacturing process itself, you're creating waste. And so there's second life batteries, which I think are very interesting as a ways to not just recycle the batteries, but actually still use them, because the batteries will still be very valuable by the time we remove them from our aircraft, as they'll still have a very high state of health. But as we look at the manufacturing process itself, so if you look at the auto industry or even the aviation industry, what percentage of the vehicle becomes scrapped? And that stuff just gets effectively thrown away. And so as you look at the entire process from the start to the very end, where are additional areas that we can scrap? So composite is a good example. So what percentage of the composite gets scrapped during the build, and what percentage can we reuse? Maybe it's in another product, or maybe it's in a way that we just recycle that. So I think it's the entire life cycle. It's not just the operations. And so I look forward to working with the industry and hopefully finding new creative ways to do that, and learning more from what Joe Ben has done at Joby in terms of really creative solutions to make sure this is a fully sustainable product.
And I think you hear it's a very holistic approach. So you can just look at the vehicle. It's a little bit like the electric car, right? My car is greener than yours, but then I never drive it. But all the carbon emission went into making the battery. So interesting. Let's one more question. So public acceptance. We always talk about public acceptance, and it's really one of the great unknowns for our industry. The majority of the public doesn't know what an eVTOL is.
Before we go into a public acceptance, hit that subscribe. We want some public acceptance.
We don't even agree on how to call them. So how they will react, this community, to this new form of transportation, we don't know. Will they fly on it? And even more important, will they be accepted on being flown over? So I would love to hear from you guys. How are your teams working in UAE this possible issue? And what are you doing to educate the public so that they become a net supporter for this industry, as opposed to what we're seeing maybe now in Paris? Joby.
So I think this is critical. This is one of the most important points as we look to launch the service and scale it. And as a result, as we looked, when I founded the company nearly 15 years ago, I set out safety and noise as the two highest priorities for the design constraints on the aircraft. We wanted to build an aircraft that was dramatically safer than small aircraft today, that was redundant across every system on the aircraft, very similar to a large commercial passenger jet. And we've been really pleased with the results we've been able to achieve there. In addition, on the acoustics, in our view, in order to take passengers where they want to go, in order to get takeoff and landing locations permitted close to where people live, these aircraft have to be dramatically quieter than today's aircraft.
Now that's important. when we're talking about these aircraft, we're not talking about ones or twos. We're talking about an ecosystem of up to hundreds, if not thousands. So we can't have them as loud as your conventional helicopter. And I like the way both Joby and Archer have tackled this acoustic problem.
And so we've spent the last 15 years developing an extraordinarily quiet vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, which we've had NASA come out and measure, where we took and they laid out an array of microphones and measured the acoustics of our aircraft in all of the different modes of flight, and showed that it was dramatically quieter than a helicopter, both in takeoff and land and in overflight. In addition, it's not just quieter in an absolute sense, it's also the quality of the sound. Rather than the low frequency whop whop of a helicopter, which travels long distances and shakes buildings, it has more of the sound of the wind in the trees. And we think that, so it's not just the absolute sound level, but also the quality of the sound, which is really crucial to having people want to have a vertiport close to them. And as Adam said earlier, the value of real estate is driven significantly by its access to new transportation modes, and we think that this will become the most coveted transportation mode, and therefore will have a really profound impact on real estate pricing. And so we're very excited about the acoustic signature of our aircraft and its ability to be welcomed into the communities we wish to serve.
And I have witnessed both their airplanes. And I remember when I see Adam airplane, there was a helicopter taking off. We couldn't hear your airplane. And when I came to see you guys at Joby, I remember it was the first time in my life that I saw an airplane, but I didn't hear it. We had to be quiet. It's like, quiet, listen. It's the opposite of what actually usually happens, that you're like, oh great, there's an airplane. So Adam, Joby concentrated on noise. What else do you think it's needed for public acceptance?
Yeah, I totally agree that safety and noise are the priorities in terms of public acceptance. But I'll add one other kind of layer, which is more of an emotional layer. I remember in the very early days, I was speaking with Dr. James Wong, who's in the audience over here, and one of the things that was really interesting and offered an incredible potential was you can make these aircraft look really cool. Aircraft don't have to look the way they've always looked, which is your typical tube and wing type of plane. All airplanes effectively look the same. You can build a really good looking aircraft that drives an emotional response, the way that we build cars today. And so cars today, people love their cars. They're attached to their cars. And I think that love for aviation, there's an opportunity to have a similar, type of emotional reaction to the planes if you build them to look really cool. And so what I think will happen is there will be early adopters that come and use the products. They will want to film this. They will want to put it out on social media. They will want to spread this because it's a really cool concept, and you can build really cool futuristic planes. I always say, I want to build the world that I want to live in. This is the world I want to live in. And I want to live in a more futuristic world that's exciting and that's energizing every day. And so I think the design of these aircraft is actually going to lead to people wanting to go and see them and touch them and try them.
And before we go to you, Akhil, very quickly, what is the answer from both of you about this criticism? It's going to be a toy for the rich. The four of us know that's not the case, but how do you respond to that type of criticism?
I'm sorry, there was a bit of feedback. I didn't catch it.
In Paris, some of the people say it's a toy for the rich. We know it's not, but how do we go against this understanding, false understanding that's out there?
I think we need to serve communities that want to be served, that are really excited. And to add to Adam's point about the excitement of this, it's not just the notion of getting to fly, it's also the experience of flying. And when you get to get in an aircraft and fly over the beautiful cities, especially a beautiful city like Abu Dhabi, and see it from the air and see it gives you a completely different perspective on your day. And so we're really, really excited to bring the magic of flight to people's daily lives.
And Adam?
I think it will, pricing of the product will also drive the ability for the product to become a mass form of transportation. And so I think it's going to be critical that we find ways to build the aircraft in safe but also affordable ways. We find ways to build infrastructure that also enables affordable flights. The nature of the vehicles themselves and being much more simple than the complexities of helicopters allows for these products to become offered to the general public at a much lower cost. But I think we will have to deliver against that, and by running, high quality businesses that are very safe, where we can show they can be affordable and attractive from a return profile, so we can build a large scale business that can serve the general public.
Now, I don't know why both companies don't just sell the time-saving aspect of it. I think that's going to be massive for the general public to accept this. This eVTOL evolution is going to happen in 2025. Guys, check out this video to see why I know that's the case. Alright, hustlers, peace out.